livearena. Hey, Chris in the house with another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today, guys, we are here on the test server because I want to present you the best Titus team that I found within the tests that I did for the past 2 weeks. And it was a lot of tests. I test everything that came into my mind, every build, every mastery, every relic, every effect, every champion group, every team that came to my mind, and that was the best result that I had doing the test. Is this the best result possible? No. It can go even further, even better, but I wasn't able to do it or to perform it. But this is a comp that can do even better than what we did. I think this can reach close to 40 billion damage, but needs RNG on your side to make it possible. So let's focus on what we are going to do here. What am I talking about? As you saw on the thumbnail, the best Titus team that I found. Why the best? Because it has the most damage out of what I test, and every little detail on this team is thinked. It had some thoughts put into it to make the whole composition work in the best way possible. So I'm going to present you every champion of the composition. I'm going to present every stats of every champion and why they are kept that way, masteries that way, with that relic, with that speed, with that stats. I'm going to explain everything, and I'm going to show the run in the end. So let's go to the result that we had with the team for me to explain and show the champions that I used. First step. Okay, this is the team that I used, and this is the result that we got. This is a 26.65 billion damage team using Titus as the main damage dealer. As you can see here, Titus did 20 billion damage, and the splash of this damage through hacks that the Madhatter puts also did more, 5.8 billion. So all this damage comes from Titus, okay? This is not proper damage from Madhatter. This is just the hacks that Madhatter put, splashing the damage from Titus. All this damage comes from Titus. So basically, out of the 26 billion that we did, the 26 come from Titus. All the other champions combined did around 92 million damage. And the other damage came from Titus. So, this is a Titus comp. This is to showcase, probably, taking away Trunda, the best champion we have for the PvE right now on bosses, Chimera, Hydra, and Clan Boss. And he's also going to take Nut away of many dungeons as fastest speed farmer for most of the players, okay? Because this champion can do it. This is how great this champion is. We're going to talk about that in another video, showcasing fast speed runs in some dungeons. So, let's focus on Titus here. The only champion for this whole composition that cannot be replaced is Titus. This is the only champion that cannot be replaced because he is the source of the damage and has a unique mechanic around it. That is the A2, okay? All other champions of this composition can be replaced, but it's a lot complex. If you replace a champion, you're gonna lose something that you're going to make your damage drop or make the whole team work differently. About replacements, we're going to talk about that in another video too, that I'm going to explain about many compositions to the budget, to the best one, explaining the roles and everything. But this one is going to be more summarized. This video is going to be more summarized. I'm looking down because the monitor is down and the camera is up, but I'm talking to you. So basically, Titus do damage, and all the other champions here are just here to support him doing his damage. Wixwell is the champion that extend this champion here. This champion plays two roles. He extends the buffs from everyone, and he grows the amount of shield that we have. This champion is here to do that. He puts the shield, he grows the shield, and he extends the buffs of the team. Madhatter, this is extremely replaceable, but between all the options that I had, this was the best one that I found. He is a damage booster champion. What's his function? He puts Hex and he puts Weaken on the Hydra, but he also acts as a secondary, a plan B, as a buff extension champion, because another skill on his kit also can extend buff duration. So if something happens to Wixwell and I'm not able to extend the buffs with him, Madhatter comes into this role, and he can replace Wixwell if something goes wrong with Wixwell. If you get eaten by the Hydra or get feared or something RNG happens during the run, Madhatter can be a plan B to that role, and he saves the run sometimes. Okay, that's why I chose this champion specifically, and because we have more possibility of damage using him. Best option. Second champion, I'm going to present you these two because there are a couple here. Yumeko and Lamasu. They are here just to refresh the skills of the team the entire run. Because how that run works. Titus A2 do damage based on the amount of shield he has, plus another effect. And you want Titus to have a shield all the time, and a bigger shield all the time that you're going with Wixwell, to do a high amount of damage all the time. So to do that, you need to always use the A2 of the Titus, always use the A2 of the Wixwell, and use the same skill of the team the whole run. For that, you need to have a rotation that you always have these skills available when these champions got turns. That's what for Lamasu and Yumeko are there. The Lamasu refreshes the Yumeko refreshes the whole team. Again, when she refreshes the whole team, she refreshes Lamasu again. Lamasu refreshes her in the next turn, she refreshes the whole team. That's how it works. He uses the A2, he uses the A2, he uses the A2. Gurptuk uses the A3. She uses the A3 on the Yumeko uses the A3 on the whole team. And you do that infinitely. That's the Infinity Titus comp. Okay? That's how the teams works. And Gurptuk, also the most replaceable champion here. The one that is easier to replace, but at the same time, the champion that gives more damage to the comp. This damage, very high damage, is only possible because of him. What is his role here? He gives you a lot of buffs with the A1 that can be extended. And he also gives you a lot of debuffs, poison debuffs, that gives you more damage because of your passive and your masteries. I'm going to explain how it works when I explain the champion. Okay? So, this is the comp that I used. This is what every champion do. This is the rotation. And I'm going to show you the speeds and the stats of every champion and what's needed and what's best on how to build them. After that, I'm going to show you the run, explaining what we did. Let's go to the champions and how to build them. Okay. Let's start with the team building and the roles and speeds. One Hydra. We got 6 champion slots that we can fulfill to do a team. On the Titus team, one spot is guaranteed, that is Titus. This one is unreplaceable and is the only unreplaceable champion. So, the first one is Titus. And we have more 5 spots to fulfill. What do we need from these spots? If you're going to use Titus, what you want first is to grow his shield. So you want a champion to grow the shield. There are only 4 champions in the game, only 3 that do it really good, only 2 that do it easily. So the best option is Wixwell, the second best option is Brogni, the third best option is Bamboos, and the fourth option and the worst one is Amic. So this is the options to do that. The second role that you want is to increase the duration of the buffs that you use, because you don't want the shield that you are growing to expire. So you want a champion that extend the duration of buffs. That's why Wixwell is so good, because he does grow the shield and he also extended buff durations. He plays two roles with a single skill. That's why Wixwell is the best option. But for that role, buff extension, we have more than 60 options in the game, I think. We have a lot. We have a lot of options now. But in this composition specifically, I'm going to use Wixwell because he's by far the best one and the easiest one to use. It was a fusion, many people might have it, so I'm going to use Wixwell for that role. So, the damage dealer status, a champion to grow the shield, a champion to increase buff duration, champions to refresh the skill of the whole team, to make the damage dealer Titus, the buff extension champion, and the shield growth champion to always have these skills, because it's mandatory for them to have them all the time. Otherwise, the shield's going to expire and the buffs are going to expire and you're going to lose your damage. So you need to use a rotation that always you're going to have your skills refreshed. Titus and Wixwell have a 3-turn cooldown skill, so you need at least a 3-turn cooldown rotation to guarantee that you're always gonna have your skills refreshed to use every turn that you have. Well, how you do that? The best way, the strongest and easiest is 2 Yumekos. Because between the champions that refresh skills, AoE, there are only one that refreshes the whole team skills and can be refreshed. Yes, we're talking about Yumeko. Yumeko is the only champion in the game that refreshes AoE, the team's skills, and also gets her skill refreshed. This skill can have its cooldown reset or reduced by other skills. She's the only one. The others that does the same cannot do that. What I'm talking about, Fade refreshes AoE skills of the entire team, but he cannot be refreshed. Kaimar also refreshes AoE, the skills of the team, but he cannot be refreshed. Crixia refreshes AoE, the skills of the team on the second form, but she cannot be refreshed. So the only champion that refreshes AoE, the skills of the team, and can be refreshed too, is Yumeko. She is the only one that does that. So she is the best option. So what can you have? 2 Yumeko, one Yumeko refresh the team, the other Yumeko refreshes the other Yumeko, and you keep an infinite cycle. If you don't have 2 Yumekos, you can have 1 Yumeko and the option that I am using, 1 Lamasu, because the Lamasu on the E3 can refresh the Yumeko, and the Yumeko can refresh the Lamasu. So you have an infinity rotation again. So your whole team has all the skills the whole time. This is really important. If you don't have Yumeko or you don't have Lamasu, there are options there. But out of the 6 spots that we have here, we are going to need to use more spots. So if you're using 1 for Titus, 1 for the shield growth and the buff extension, that is Wixwell, 2 for Yumekos or Yumekos and Lamasu, there are 2 missing spots that you can use to amplify your damage by any means necessary. So if you're losing more spots, if you're using more spots to use champions to reduce the cooldown, you're going to have less spots to use to amplify your damage, and your damage is going to be lower. Okay? If you're using not Wixwell, you're using Brogni, so you're gonna need another champion to extend the buff durations. So you're losing one damage dealer spot to put another champion that's just going to extend the buff durations. So if you're not using the best option for the role, you're going to need to use more than one champion, and you're going to lose damage because the space of the champion that you were going to use to boost your damage is going to be fulfilled by another champion that has something that you cannot not have. Okay? 1 spot for Titus, 1 spot for Wixwell, 2 spots for Lamasu and Yumeko. If you don't have Lamasu and Yumeko, you can use another champions that can refresh the skills of the entire team. But if you do that, you're gonna need more than 1 spot. Than 2 spots, sorry. Because the best options, they are from the same faction. They are Emic and Lady Iref. But you're gonna need 3 exemplars here to make it work. By 3 exemplars, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? You're gonna need 3 Emic, or 3 Lady Iref, or 2 Emic, 1 Lady Iref, or 2 Lady Iref, 1 Emic. Okay? Because on these champions, A2, he decreases the cooldown of all ally skills except these champions by 1 turn. And it's a 3-turn cooldown. So you need 3 of them to make the whole team refreshes, since Wixwell and Titus also have a 3-turn cooldown skill. Okay? They are the champions that are most important. Late Iref the same. On day 3, also decrease the cooldown of all allies skills except the champions by 1 turn. It is a 3-turn cooldown and booked. So if you put 3 Late Iref or 3 Emic, or the combination of 3 of these champions, you're going to have a perfect rotation of 3 turns to refresh the skill of your Wixwell and your Titus, but you're going to lose 1 spot of damage boosting champion. Okay, but it also works. So if you have 2 damage dealing spots, the best options that I found it is Gurptuk and Madhatter. If you just have 1 spot, the best option I think it is Madhatter, because it does more things, and you're going to lose a lot of damage, but you're going to do the comp. Okay, so let's make the disposal of them into the team. The disposal of them into the team is like that. The first 3 spots, or the first 2 spots, depending on the composition that you're having, are going to be the fastest champions, are going to be the ones that refresh the skills. Because they need to play first to refresh the skills of the other in the team. So, on our team, the perfect team, we're going to use the fastest Lamasu, because she refreshes the Yumeko. Then the Yumeko, because she refreshes the whole team. Then we're gonna have our first buffer, that is going to be Gurptuk. Then we're going to have our second buffer, that is going to be Wixwell, and we're going to have Madhatter in the end. So with this rotation, Titus is the last one, because everybody did their actions before to prepare him to do the damage. He's going to have his buffs extended before he plays for not expire the buffs. He's going to have everybody setting the debuffs on the enemy team before he plays to be able to do the best amount of damage possible, and that's how we are going to rotate. These are the speeds. We're going to have a range between 280 and 260, being 280 the fastest one, and the 260 the slowest one. 280 Lamasu here, 260 Titus here. Let's go. Have in mind that you don't need to use specifically these speeds. These speeds are for Ultra Nightmare, and you just need to have the champions between this range. You have the skill refreshers playing first. It doesn't matter the speed, but the fastest one needs to be 280, and anything below that can be used as a speed, but you need them to play in order. First, the skill refreshers, then the buffers, then the shield growers, then the buff extenders, then, as last, Titus. So, the first champion is going to always be 280, the last champion is going to always be 260, and the last one always needs to be Titus. The first one needs always to be the skill refreshers. So if you want to have 280 on Lamasu, 279 on Yumeko, 278 on Gurptuk, 277 on Wixwell, 276 on Madhatter, 260 on Titus, it works. But I prefer to have a little bit of a gap between them, because if something goes wrong, RNG. So I prefer to go this way. These are speeds for Ultra Nightmare, okay? This is the best rotation? No. There are better rotations, but they make the run harder to do. More RNG, you're going to need to redo the run more times to make it work. So I prefer to use this because this is the safest with highest damage that I found. Another thing that I need to mention, if you want to drop the difficulty of the Hydra, you just need to take 20 away of speed per each difficulty that you drop. For example, if you drop from the Ultra Nightmare to the Nightmare, you take 20 speed out of each one of these champions. If you drop from the Ultra Nightmare to the Brutal, you're going to take 40 speed away from each one of these champions. If you drop from the Ultra Nightmare to the Hard, you're going to take 60 out of speed of each one of these champions. So the fastest one would have 220 and the last one 200. Okay? And this speed does not count, does not take in consideration the Great Hall bonus. So if you get the Great Hall bonus, there is going to make it easier for you to reach a good amount of speed, okay? If you have 20 as extra speed from the Great Hall bonus, that's going to be easier to reach. Okay, these are the speeds of the rotation and the order they are settled in the team with the role they are playing into the team. Third part of the video. First, we introduced the comp and the damage. Then we introduced the speeds and the roles. And now we are going to teach you how and why to build every champion in the best way possible. Let's go to it. First, the star of the show, Titus. The only champion that cannot be replaced on this comp. And the best option for it to be built, it's this way. Let's start. What makes this whole comp possible is this skill here, the A2 of the Titus, Student of War. Attack one enemy, this attack will always be critical. This is important because you don't need critical rate on the champion at all. Forget about critical rate, it doesn't matter. If the champion is under a shield buff, you're going to be under a shield buff all the time because the shield buff is part of the multiply of this skill. Okay, this attack also gains damage boost equal to the value of the shield. That's why you're going to be under shield buff all the time. Then removes all the debuffs from all allies if the target is skilled. If the target survives, places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted if this champion is under a shield buff. Okay? Based on defense and HP. But there's a trick here that we need to talk about. So, if you guys play the game for long enough, you might remember Cadaver, that the higher the shield, the higher the damage he was able to do. He was the highest damage dealer on the entire game for the clan boss and the Hydra back in the time. A rare champion, and he used that on the A1. This champion does not do the same. It looks like the same, but it's not the same. Because the shields are capped now. The highest a shield can grow now, it's only 1 million. Back in the Cadaver time, there were no cap to the shield. You could go infinity amount of damage with the Cadaver. Now the maximum amount of damage we can do, the maximum amount of shield we can grow is 1 million. And how the damage of the champion escalate that high? Because the shield is into the calculation of the damage. It's not only the shield that matters. Many things matters for this skill to do damage. So let's go in order. The most important thing, the amount of shield that you have. The higher the shield, if you have the cap 1 million, higher the multiplication of this skill will be. The second part, defense. The higher your defense, higher your damage. The third part, HP, the lower your HP, the higher is your damage. This is tricky, isn't it? But it is the way it works. Because, not in that specific way, but it multiplies the defense per the amount of shield, then it divides by the amount of HP. So, you want a very high defense, a very high shield, and the smallest amount of HP that you can with this champion. And, as I said, not only that matters. A lot of things matters to do more damage with this skill, the Student of War, the A2 of the Titus. So, defense matters, damage boosting things like weaken and passives matters, and critical damage matters. So, to do high amount of damage with Titus, you want the highest shield as possible, to ignore the most amount of defense that you can, to have the highest defense you can, to have the lowest amount of HP you can, and to have the most amount of critical damage you can. Okay? So these are the 5 things that you're going to have in mind while building your Titus. Because of that, what are the best blessings to use on him? If you have a 6-star blessing, undoubtedly, I made 1,000 of tests. The best one is Crushing Hand. Okay? If you have the 6-star, the best option is Crushing Hand because it ignores a ton of defense. A ton. And by far the best one. If you don't have 6-star, Crushing Hand is not good. It's not good. It only is a viable one if it is 6-star. If you don't have 6-star, you're going to use any amount of stars that you have, you're going to use Heaven Cast as option. Okay, second best option is Heaven Cast because you're going to have a ton of buffs on your champion. And the per buff, it's going to multiply a lot the damage. So second best option is Heaven Cast by far. And the third best option, it is Nature's Wrath. Because even you think he does not have debuffs on his kit, but he has. On the A2, when you use it, if you don't kill your enemy, it provokes a head. And this is unresistible if you're on the shield. On the Hydra, it never counts as you're killing a champion when you kill a head. Because it never dies, it's cut off the head. So, you're always going to deliver this provoke on the head that you are able to provoke. So you're always putting these debuffs so you can use the Nature's Wrath as third best option to get a higher damage. Okay, up to 30%. These are the order of best skills, of best blessings. Crushing Hand, the best one. Heaven Cast, the second best one. And Nature's Wrath, the third best one. Okay? Masteries. These are the masteries that you're going to use for Titus. Okay? These are important because we want resistance on the build. So to take this resistance is good. And you want these to make it do more damage. The critical damage, the Hurt of Glory, the single out, the bring it down, and you also want Stoked Fury, okay? Take Stoked Fury because it's really, really, really important when you use Gurptuk on the team. So Stoked Fury is really important. And I went with Flawless Execution to have the same amount of damage all the time because the setup that we're doing for this team, we are going to have almost all the time the critical, the ignore defense at the maximum. So I didn't went for Ham Smasher this time. I went for Flawless Execution for more critical damage. This is the masteries that I'm using on Titus. You can also go the support tree just to get a lot of steel if you don't want to use these 3. But I recommend you to use this 3 because all the champions of this comp needs to have 500 resistance at minimum, okay? We don't want the Chimera to take away our buffs, even more from Titus. Titus absolutely have to have at least 500 resistance to not let the Hydra steal his buffs. If the Hydra steals his shield, you're gonna need to restart the run or you're going to lose all your damage. Or the possibility of doing damage. So 500 resistance is mandatory on every single champion that we are using on this composition with this setup. Okay, so this is the best masteries that I found. This is the best blessing that I found. And relic. The best relic, no doubt, that I tested, it was the Cat's Gaze. With this setup, the Cat's Gaze helped you to ignore 10% of the defense plus this amount here, up to 20%. By far, the best relic that we have for him. Like, the damage increase of the Cat's Gaze that we had, it was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Incredible amount of resistance we ignored and made our damage go a lot higher. If you don't have the Cat's Gaze, what are the second best option? The second best option that I tried and had good result, it was the Scroll of the Unseen. If you don't have the Cat's Gaze, The second best option is the Scroll of the Unseen, but you have to guarantee that the champion has a Veil the entire battle, okay? And how you're going to guarantee that if you don't have a Veil on your comp? By killing the head that puts fear, the head of torment. When you kill this head, you can have a perfect Veil on your champions. So you need, on the start of the run, you need to kill that head, and you need the Veil to land on the Titus, so for you to extend it to the maximum, okay? If you're going to use the Scroll of the Unseen, you need absolutely to have Veil or perfect Veil on Titus. This is the second best option, okay? The third best option is the Eye of Coroneth. Like I said, if you have it, if you don't have the Cat's Gaze or you don't have the Scroll of the Unseen, the Eye of Coroneth can be used because you're going to land the Provoke on the head, and this is going to make your damage grow higher, okay? The fourth best option, it is the Covetus Passion, because it also gives you critical damage and help you to do more damage with the Shatter buff here, okay? The fourth best option. And if you don't have it, the last option that also works is the Axe Serpentis, because every single skill that you use here is going to do more damage on decapitated heads. The Axe Serpentis is really good for Titus, okay? But it's the fifth best option. These are the order of relics that are better for him. The first one, the Cat's Gaze. The second one, the Scroll of the Unseen. The third one, RF Coroneth. The fourth one, Covetus Passion. The fifth one, Axe Serpentis. Okay? The best Gemstones, undoubtedly, Boss Layer. Boss Layer is by far the biggest source of damage between the Gemstones and makes a huge difference. So the highest amount of Boss Layers you can put, the best option. The second best option is this triangle here. The critical strategy that increases the damage, the critical damage by 10% for each enemy whose HP is at 50% or lower, okay? This is a good option. If you don't have it, if you don't have them, there are other options. Yes, this one, Full Killer. The Wearers deals 5% more damage against enemies with full HP. It also works a little bit. And basically, it's that. When you kill Hydra heads, it doesn't count as killing heads. So things like Piercing Strike doesn't work because you never, after killing an enemy, you're never killing an enemy on the entire run. So it doesn't work. It would be so good if it worked. It would be so good. But basically, this is the best Gemstones. The most important is by far the Boss Layer. The higher amount of Boss Layer you have, the higher your damage, okay? And finally, the sets. What's important for Titus to use the sets? 6 Merciless and 2 pieces of Zeal. This is the best setup that I found for him. I tried a lot of setups. This is the easiest with the highest amount of damage. There is higher ways of doing damage, yes, with 6 pieces of Zeal. But the setup of the team is harder to do, okay? And the damage fluctuation is very high. Sometimes you hit a lot harder, sometimes you don't hit a lot harder. So I prefer to use 6 pieces of Merciless, 2 pieces of Zeal, because this is the highest amount of damage with the lowest amount of fluctuation that we had during the test with this setup. So what are you going to focus in? Defense, the highest you can. Critical damage, the highest you can. HP, the lowest you can. And 500 resistance. 500 resistance is mandatory on everyone on this comp, okay? These are the stats that I have on this Titus. He got stats that matters. 6k defense, 6.1k defense, 442 critical damage, and 551 HP. That's what matters for the champion. Okay? This is the first champion of the comp, Titus. Second champion of the comp. Okay, let's go to Lamasu. Second champion of the team, the fastest one. These are the masteries that we have on Lamasu. Basically, you want to avoid the turn meat ones. Here, I just have randomly that you don't need. The only thing that you really need is the Defiant and the Unshakable for the extra resistance, because like I said, every champion of this comp has 500 resistance at minimum. So these are the masteries of Lamasu. The blessing that we use on Lamasu, I use Intimidate Presence on her because she is a champion that always only using the skill on Yumeko, and she doesn't touch the Hydra at all in the entire run. So I'm using Intimidate Presence on her. It doesn't matter that much, but it's an extra stats that you get. Okay? On Relic on her, I'm going to use the highest amount of critical damage that I can. The relic with the highest amount of critical damage that I can. It can be any relic that gives you critical damage, okay? You're going to filter here best stats. You're going to set up critical damage. Any relic that gives you critical damage that you have access to the highest amount, you're going to use on her, okay? It doesn't matter which. It doesn't matter which relic. Oh, it cannot be the collective, okay? You just want the critical damage. What for? Because when the Hydra targets a champion to eat, it targets the champion with the highest critical damage. So we have a very high critical damage Titus. So we want another champion to be the target of the Hydra head while eating, because we don't want Titus to be the target, because if the Titus get eaten in the beginning of the fight, it's going to reset all the shields that he's stacking, and you're going to lose a lot of damage. If we can avoid Titus being eaten, the far on the run that we avoid him to be eaten, the highest our damage. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is not the highest amount of damage this comp can do. Why? Because my Titus got eaten. My Titus got eaten in the middle of the run. These 26 billion damage, it's only half of the run because my Titus got eaten. So, if you can avoid him being the target of the Hydra Devour, you're going to extend the possibility of your damage. So, we're going to use on her the highest critical damage possible relic, because we want her to be one of the targets of the Hydra Devour before Titus. The sets that I have on her shield set. Like I said, she is one of the champions that are going to maintain the buff of the shield in the beginning of the fight, and I choose her to hold the shield set of this team. Okay, I'm using a shield set on her and a critical damage based set. Here it shows the Zeal and the Merciless to boost her critical damage, because I want her to have more critical damage than Titus. So remember, Titus had 442. My Lamasu has 455 critical damage. She has higher critical damage than Titus, so she's going to be devoured first before him. Like I said, resistance is really important for this comp to work. You needed to go close to the 500 on every champion. So here, if you choose Hydra, you're gonna see that she has almost the 500 resistance that I said every champion is going to have on this composition, okay? Every single champion, 500 resistance, because we don't want the Hydra to steal our buffs, okay? Like I said, 280 speed. She's using shield set and higher critical damage than Titus. That's what matters. The speed, the resistance, and the higher critical damage than Titus. Specifically here, on my comp, I'm using shield set. You don't need to specifically choose her to use the shield set. It can be also the Yumeko. Okay, the Yumeko can also be using the shield set. Because as I said, the damage of the Titus grows with the shield. So, right now, on the game, we have 3 possibilities of shields, and all of the 3 possibilities of shields stacks. Let me show to you in a quick demonstration. Wixwell. This is a Wixwell without buffs. On Wixwell's kit, we have the first option on shield on the game. That is the skill shield. This is the symbol of the shield that we use it based on skill. Is this symbol here. Is the first option that we have. It's to use this shield. You can grow this shield up to 1 million, and that's going to multiply the damage of the Titus. As I said, we have 3 shields, and they stack. So you can have up to 3 million amount of shield if you have all the 3 shields stacked on you. And that's really important, because that's going to multiply the damage of the Titus. So this is the first one that we have. The second option is to use a shield set on a champion, because it's the second form of shield. If you use a shield set on Titus, we're going to have this shield here. As you can see, this is the symbol of the shield set. And when you use the skill, as you can see, the shield growed, because it's stacking the skill shield plus the set shield. This is the second form of shield. And there is a third one that can also be stacked. This is the hardest one to get. Not many players are going to have, but if you have, you're going to have the biggest damage possibility in the game. The third form of shield is granted by a mythical relic. The Vulcardic Heart gives you a magma shield. That is the third form of shield in the game, and also stacks with the others. So, if you have a champion with the magma shield, you're going to have the shield from the set, the shield from the magma shield, and when you use the skill that grants shield, you're gonna also have the shield from the skill. So these are the 3 sources of shield in the game. Let's go back to Lamasu. Let's go to the Yumeko. Okay, let's go to the third champion here, the second fastest, Yumeko. These are the masters that I'm using on her. Like I said, here I only care about the critical damage from the King Strike, and the Defiant, and the Unshakable. Resistance and critical damage, because my Yumeko is the other champion that has higher critical damage than Titus, okay? On her, the best blessing, it doesn't matter how many stars you have, the best one is Cruelty, because she's going to hit the Hydra head before Titus and going to take more defense out of the Hydra head. So Cruelty is the mandatory blessing for her on this comp. Is the only one that matters, okay? It doesn't matter how many stars. On Relic, any Relic that you want that have critical damage, you're going to filter here, you're going to stats, and you're going to set up critical damage. The highest one that you can put on her that give critical damage works. It cannot be the collective. Any other one works, okay? And on sets, I have on her the highest critical damage of all the entire comp.
And the stats on her, it's like that. I only care about the critical damage. She has the highest critical damage on the entire comp. She is the second fastest one on the comp, and she has higher than 500 critical, 500 resistance, okay? Like everybody on the comp, more than 500 resistance. We are using that setup on her for her to be the first target of the Hydra Devour on the team, because between the tests that I did, when she's devoured, we can free her and doesn't matter. It doesn't shake the entirety of the comp, because when the Lamasu uses the E3 on her, it gives 50% turn mid boost, so I can sync her back to the comp in the fastest way than any other champion getting eaten first. That's why she has the highest amount of critical damage on the comp to be the first target of the Hydra Devour, and I can get her back without unsyncing the entire comp. This was the fastest way to do the run without unsyncing after the first Devour, okay? That's how we're gonna build the Yumeko. You can use any set, you just need to have her with the highest critical damage, and the critical damage set is the easiest way to do it, okay? Remember, 500 resistance at least, highest critical damage, second fastest on the comp between the speed ranges that I said. The fourth champion here, and the best we have for the role, Vault Keeper Wixwell. Pass Fusion. This is the masteries that we are using on him. Basically here we just care about the blessing gifts to extend the buffs, to have the chance to extend the buffs that we cast, the Shield Bearer to increase the amount of shield we cast, and the Unshakable and the Defiant, because we want him, as any other champion on this comp, to have higher than 500 resistance. These are the masteries that we are using on him. On the skills, why this champion is so good between the others? Because, as I said, on the roles that we have as necessary to make the comp work, we have the buff extension champion and the shield grower champion. These are two different roles, and this champion, with a single skill, that is this one, the Tempest of Knowledge, he fulfills the two roles at once. Single skill fulfills two roles at once, so you have a free spot to use one more damage booster champion, because this champion is going to do two things at the same time with the same skill. He's perfect. He's perfect for this scenario. This skill, attack all enemies, has 75% when booked 100% of placing decrease. Attack debuff for 2 turns, also increase the duration of all allies buffs by 1 turn. Buff extension champion role here, the first part of the skill, so he fulfills one role. Then increases the value of all shields on all allies. Second role, shield growth champion on the same skill, perfect champion. The value of each shield is increased proportional to the total number of buffs which had their duration increased, and we are going to constantly be increasing the buff duration. The Titus is going to hold a lot of champions because we're going to increase that infinitely, and the shield is going to grow until the maximum of 1 million. That is the cap, but we can have 1 million from the shield set, 1 million from the skill, that he also puts the shield with the skill, and 1 million from the magma shield relic. By the way, this is the relic that we are using on him. Not everybody's going to have this relic, so if you don't have that relic on him, it doesn't matter the relic you use on him, okay? Either you put Vucadi card. If you don't have Vucadi card, don't even put a relic on him. It won't make that much difference. On blessings, I don't have a blessing on my Wixwell, but if I had one, any amount of stars, it would be cruelty. This is the best blessing for him by far, okay? Because he's going to land a hit when using the E2 that he's going to use every single round, and that hit can take away defense of the Hydra heads. So this is the best. As I said, Vucadi card as relic. If you don't have, you don't need to bother using it. This is one of the easiest ones to build, because basically you just need the speed and the resistance. That's the only thing that matters. But what really matters on him is the set. 9 pieces of protections is the best set for him by far. Why? Because he lands a increased defense buff, he lands a shield on you, and the intercept. The intercept is going to get lost with time, but the shield buff and the increased defense is going to stay on the Titus, and with that you get 10% more damage as the effect of 9 pieces of protection set. Okay, so it's important to have him in 9 pieces of protection, because grants you 10% more damage to the Titus. And this is how we're going to build Wixwell. The 2 spots missing are just the damage boosters that we have. So let's go for the one that I think most of the people is going to have, that is Madhatter, 5th champion of the comp. On Madhatter, these are the masteries that I'm using. Basically, what we care most is the Max Hexer, just to have it, and the extra accuracy that we can get here. This is what really matters for him, most of the time. On Blessings, I went for Cruelty, because he lands a hit on every Hydra head, and that takes away defense. Okay. And on relics, if you have the possibility, for sure, that's not going to be the situation for 99.99999% of the player base. But the best option for him is the Death Dealer, because he has an affinity and he lands a hit to put the debuffs of his kit, that the Hex and the Weaken. He needs to hit the heads. So if you have the Death Dealer, that's never going to matter, the affinity. But if you don't have the Death Dealer, the best option for him is Book of Necrotus. Okay, this one right here, Journal of Necrotus, sorry. If you don't have the Death Dealer, the Journal of Necrotus is the best option for him, because sometimes you can use him to boost the turn meter. So Journal of Necrotus is the best option if you don't have the Death Dealer. 99% of the people won't have the Death Dealer, so we're going to use the Journal of Necrotus. Don't worry about that. That's not a problem. That's just... we're on the test server, so I wanted to use the best option possible. And want you to know the best option possible. This is what we are going to use for him. The Journal of Necrotus, most of the player. Doesn't matter that much. You can just don't have any relic on him and won't change that much out of the run. The Death Dealer is the most impactful one, because you avoid of doing weak hits. So basically, that's it. Another one that's very easy to build somehow, because you just need 500 resistance, the amount of accuracy needed to land debuffs on the difficulty that you're playing, 550 is enough, and the right amount of speed, okay, to rotate on the comp. Here, there is something also that's really important. If you're able to build him in 9 Pharaoh, this is the best set for him. Why? Because we use him to land 2 debuffs and very important debuffs on the heads. Weaken is the highest amount of damage boost skill that you're going to have on the team. Is this Weaken here. Is going to grow your damage by 25%, which is a lot. And the Hex is responsible to 1/4 of the damage that we do, because we're going to land these Hex on every head, and when Titus kill a head, he splashes that insane amount of damage and kill all other heads. And this is 30%. This is 30% of the damage he does on the first target. So he splashes that damage that he's... On the run that I did, he was hitting 500 million damage in one hit sometimes. And he splashes 30% of that in each head that has Hex. So Hex is extremely impactful. If you don't have a champion like Madhatter that puts Weaken and Hex, you can use some champions like Lydia that has an AoE that puts Weaken, decrease defense, and you can have Cursed set on her to make her land some Hex also, okay? That's another option to replace Madhatter. But Madhatter also has this A3 that increases the duration of the buffs and gives you turn meter. This is very helpful when Wixwell get eaten or something, get desynced because of a fear or something. This saves you many times. That's why Madhatter is a really good option to have on the team. And that's why I chose him to be here. The sets that I'm using him, again, 9 Pharaoh, because he lands 2 debuffs, and landing 2 debuffs is going to give you 10% more damage as the effect of 9 pieces of Pharaoh. That's why he's built this way. And the last option, but not less important, but the one that is easiest replaced, is going to be Gurptuk. Okay, last champion of the team, 6th champion, the one that easiest replaceable, but a vital champion to do more damage. These are the masters we are using on Gurptuk. What's really important? The extra resistance from Unshakable and Defiant, the extra accuracy from Pinpoint, Charged Focus, Swarm's Mitre, and Blessing Gifts. Blessing Gifts is vital, okay? What for? Blessings. Cruelty is the best option for him. You can use it. It doesn't matter how many stars you have. I only have 2 stars on here. I don't use any relic on him. It's not impactful. You don't need any relic on him at all. But the set is really important. Really important. Why? Because with 9 pieces of protection, every buff that you land on a champion is going to give him 5% more damage. And Gurptuk, as I said, he is one of the highest damage boost improvement champions in the game. He only loses to Titus itself. Okay? Why? Because of this passive. Allies under poison debuffs inflict 75% more damage for each poison debuff on them, stacking up to 30% for poisons. This damage increase applies to all of their skills. Okay? That's what we are using to boost our damage. So, on the A3, he lands 2.5% poison debuff on all allies for 3 turns, and this debuff cannot be resisted or blocked. Also has a chance of putting block buffs on all enemies team for 2 turns. So you land block buffs on the Hydra, and you land 3 poisons on you. We can use up to 4 of these poisons to boost our damage per 30%. This by far is incredible. But do you remember that we had that mastery on our Titus? That mastery increased the damage inflicted by 4% for each debuff on the champion. So stacks up to 12%, which means 4 debuffs. So the 30% we are getting for the Gurptuk is going to be more 12% because of these masters that we are having on our Titus. So he's giving Titus 42% more damage, and because of the protection set, for each buff that he gives to Titus, It also grant him 5% more damage. And when we use the A1 and our champion is under poison, it lands a continuous U on that champion. So we are going to use his A1 during the run to stack continuous use on the Titus until the maximum amount that we can, that is 10 buffs, for the Titus have more damage. We can stack around 6 to 5 continuous use on Titus, which grants him around 25% more damage. So in total, the Gurptuk gives Titus 67% damage boost. It's half of his damage almost of boosting. This is incredibly amount of boost. This is responsible for the high damage that we are doing. And that's why we have in 9 protections and with this build and on this comp as the role of a damage booster because of what he can do. And these were all the champions and how to build them and the best way to do them and why to use them. And now let's go to the run. While the concentrated version of me was doing the run and I was recording it, I will explain just with the voice what we are doing. First, we starting loading the buffs. We use the shield, we grow the turns with the Madhatter. Then I use a buff of the Titus on the Gurptuk just to give him more buffs than anybody else to him to be the target of the head that steals buffs, to not focus the Titus. Then I'm going to, from now and beyond, just increase the duration of the buffs with the Wixwell and to use the A2 of the Madhatter to put the Hex and the Weaken. I'm going to use some A1s of the Gurptuk and some A3s until I have all the amount of continuous use that I'm able to. Then I'm going to start doing damage. We refresh the Yumeko with the Lamasu all the time, and every time the Yumeko has a turn, we're going to use the A3 of her to refresh as everybody, like now. And then Titus is going to hit the head. Boom, the splash goes. And we're still growing the shield. We're still growing the shield. We're going to grow the shield with the A2 all the time. So, as you can see, but per the amount of stacks we have, we never want to let the shield fall. I'm increasing a little bit more the count of buffs, and then I'm going to start dealing damage. He's already doing a lot of damage, but far from what is the maximum. And that's a rotation. We are just going to stack continuous use, stack poisons, and grow the amount of shield and the duration of the debuffs. Hit the head that's dead all the time. Yumeko and Lamasu is always the same action. Refresh Yumeko with Lamasu's A3, refresh the entire team with Yumeko's A3 also. Then we use Titus A2 to do a big damage. And the Wixwell, most of the time A2, just to increase the duration of the buffs and the size of the shield. And that's it. That's the rotation. It's a very simple rotation. You know, we're gonna use the A2 to land the Hex and the Weaken. Then we're gonna hit ahead and gonna use the A2. I'm counting the amount of continuous use that we have for me to know if we're close to 10. A2, look at the damage. 246 million. It's going to be a lot higher with time, because we still grow in the shield. The shield at the moment is at the maximum, but my buffs are not at the maximum. With the Gurptuk, I still am landing the continuous U, so the damage is still be growing. Do you remember we hit for 246 million? I'm increasing the amount of buffs here, the duration. This is not going to be a huge damage because we don't have poisons. I avoided to hit the dead head this time because I want to keep them dead a little bit more time for me to stack more. And now I'm going to try a hit. Last time it was 246. Let's see now. 292, so 50 million more. And we still have a lot to grow in damage. We still stacking the continuous use and the poisons. This damage go up to all the time 300 and something million, and on the maximum hit 500 and something million on the dead head. So this is the rotation. I just going to check how many continuous use I have to see how many times I still need to use the A1 of the Gurptuk. After I finish all the 10 continuous use that I'm able, or the 10 buffs, I'm going to always use the E3 of the Gurptuk to stack the most amount of poisons to do more damage. And we're going to do that and that and that. I'm going to accelerate now until the end of the run for you to see the entire result. As you guys could see, these were the result of the run that we did using the Titus. This is not the best result. I know we're using a lot of big resources. For example, Cat's Gaze plus 18, some other relics plus 18, mythical relics on many champion, mythical gemstones. But even without that, this champion can do incredible amount of damage using this composition. There are a lot of changes that can be done to the composition, a lot of things to still try. There are more budget versions of it. I'm going to explain more budget versions of it in another videos because this is already a 1 hour video. It's too long, but I wanted to be very detailed on this one, explaining every little detail for you to know what to do and what are you doing and why are you doing to take the best result of possible for that. This is going to be to most of the players the easiest way to achieve insane amount of damage, even beat Trunda users using a fusion. Brothers and sisters and chess up, this champion is phenomenal in multiple areas of the game. This is the best fusion we had in the past few years. I think the only compared to him is Nut. The only compared to him is Nut, and I think he's more useful than Nut because he's going to replace Nut as the fastest farmer for many dungeons, and also his performance on Hydra, Chimera, and Clan Boss is outstanding. Something Nut could even never dream about. So this is Titus. This is the best comp that I found between all the tests that I did. Hope you enjoy. If you like this kind of content, do not forget to hit the like button. And as always, have a wonderful time. Try this comp if you're able to. We'll be launching videos with more budget versions of it. But this is the extreme version with extreme result that I wanted to share. As always, remember, it's all about arena.